Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world, more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Special greetings to our brethren in Colorado, to our brethren in Georgia, in Fiji Island, Mexico, Spain, in Africa, to the United Kingdom, and to our brethren in Australia, and to the rest of the 144,000 living saints scattered abroad. Greetings. May the good Lord bless you and have a wonderful evening. This is our episode number 11 on the subject, the 42 months prophecy. And we know that is the 42 months prophecy recorded on Revelation 11 verse 2. So, to summarize again, our main focus is to completely comprehend the subject recorded on Revelation chapter 10. And accordingly, the first two verses on Revelation 11 belongs to the subject on Revelation chapter 10, according to 2TG 14, page 16. And to repeat again, why is it that God separated the two verses on Revelation 11 on chapter 10, in spite of the fact that it is a part of the subject on Revelation chapter 10? To let us know that the first two verses in Revelation chapter 11 is the particular object in view, and to separate the two movements before the rod came and the two movements at the time when the shepherd's rod had been bestowed by God. So reading again in track number 6, page 65, the revelator also having been given a vision of these two movements recorded in chapters 10 and 11. So there are two movements recorded in chapters 10 and 11. But to repeat again, the two movements in chapter 10 is the groundwork, and the two movements in chapter 11 is the particular object in view. The two movements on chapter 10 are the movements that had been raised by God before the rod came, and the two movements Revelation chapter 11 is the movements when the rod had been bestowed by God, or the shepherd's rod message. And the next step is that we need to understand that the focal point on the subject of Revelation chapter 10 is the book of Daniel. That little book is the book of Daniel. And concerning the book of Daniel, the particular object in view is concerning the daily in the sanctuary, by which, according to track number 3, page 34, it is the work of the exceeding great horn, was therefore what he did not understand. And of course, whatever the explanation given by the angel, it must be pertaining to the things by which Daniel do not understand, and it is the work of the exceeding great horn, according to the shepherd's rod. But we already explained that according to 2TG number 33 on page 10, as the promise given in Daniel 10 verse 21, saying, "But I will show thee that which is noted in the scripture of truth, and there is none that holdeth with me in these things but Michael your prince." Daniel was then promised all the light could be given, not only on the vision of chapter 8, but on all that is noted in the scripture of truth in connection with the vision. That which the angel showed him is recorded in chapters 11 and 12. Chapter 11, you will see, begins with the vision of chapter 8, with the kings of Medo-Persia and Grecia, as symbolized by the ram and he-goat in chapter 8. Then was Daniel told that the explanation at last was sufficient, but that it was impossible for him to understand it all, for the vision was sealed to the time of the end. Chapter 12, verses 8 and 9. 2TG number 33, page 10. So, the promise given in Daniel 10 verse 21, according to that reading, in reality, does not pertain only to the vision on chapter 8, but to all the prophecies which is related to the vision. And we know that the main subject is in Daniel chapter 8. It is the cleansing of the sanctuary. And we gradually explained that according to 2TG 15 page 3, saying there is but one book in the Bible that has had to be opened, and that is the book of Daniel, Daniel 12 verse 4. And since the first thing which the angel did was to open the book, the analysis proves that he actually appears on the scene at the commencement of the time of the end, the time the book was to be opened. Revelation 10 verse 2. The time of the end, to repeat again, is divided into two divisions. The time of the end, which is the period of the judgment that pertains to the dead, and the time of the end, which is the period of the judgment that pertains to the living. And of course, the focal point of the vision in Revelation chapter 10 must be pointing to the time when the entire book of Daniel will be completely understood, not in the time by which the book of Daniel is gradually being understood. And the Shepherd's Rod made it so plain here in 3 Symbolic Code 8 to 10, page 8, saying, however, history proves that the prophecies of Daniel were not all revealed at once, but slowly. The fact that we as yet do not understand the whole book proves that some parts of it are yet closed. Through Symbolic Code 8 to 10, page 8. So, some parts are, in other words, in the days of B.T. Hotep, the entire book of Daniel was not yet completely understood. Remember, the entire book of Daniel, as well as the book of Revelation, the main subject is the judgment. So, let us read again the statement in tract 15, page 13. Both seers distinctly declare that the event which they saw was the judgment. So, the focal point of the vision of Daniel and the vision of John is concerning the judgment in the heavenly sanctuary. The difference between the two scenes is that Daniel was led to look into the sanctuary while preparations were being made for the judgment to convene, whereas John was led to look into the sanctuary after the judgment had been set up. In fact, John not only saw the judgment in progress, but he saw the whole proceeding from start to finish. Track number 15, page 13. Now, as far as the vision of Daniel, because we focus our attention to the book of Daniel, because that is the particular object in view, on the subject, Revelation chapter 10. As far as the vision of Daniel, the judgment that was shown by God to him is only the judgment that pertains to the dead. He has no vision concerning the judgment that pertains to the living. And that vision was given by God to John, the Revelator. So in this instance, we can easily declare that antitypical Daniel is Sister White, because the only vision that was given by God to Sister White is the judgment that pertains to the dead. And that is the focal point of the vision of the book of Daniel. Now let's read the General Conference Special on page 39. General Conference Special, page 39. It says, the judgment for the dead, furthermore, is not the message of the great and dreadful day. The message of the great and dreadful day is the judgment that pertains to the living. It does not even touch on the prophecies of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. So, the message that was entrusted by God, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, through the medium of Sister White, is only the primary phase of the message of the third angel, and that is the judgment that pertains to the dead. So, that is very plain. And that message that was entrusted by God to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. He says, do not even touch the message of the judgment that pertains to the living. Now, I would like to read again the statement in White House Recruiter on page 39, saying, all who have perused these pages to this point have surely become aware of the fact that even this very restricted representation of the additional message, that of the judgment of the living, gives in itself tremendous power and force to the three angels' messages. Earl Writings, page 277. But in what way is it to give absolute power and force to them? First, by bringing to light the heretofore unrevealed aspects of the judgment, and then subsequently, by freeing God's people from both sin and sinners, thereby bringing into existence the long-looked-for purified church that looketh forth as the morning, fair as the moon, clear as the sun, and terrible as an army with banners. Song of Solomon, chapter 6, verse 10. Prophets and Kings, page 725. A veritable powerhouse indeed. So, we know that the additional message mentioned here in Early Writings, page 277, is the Shepherd's Rod Publications. And to repeat again, here in track number 5, let's read. In track number 5, page 108, saying, thus the doctrine of the investigative judgment. So, do not forget that statement, investigative judgment. It did not say executive judgment. Thus the doctrine of the investigative judgment, along with the doctrine of ingathering and numbering the 144,000, comprises the present truth committed to the Seventh-day Adventist denomination in 1844. So there are three doctrines that have been entrusted by God to the Seventh-day Adventist Church since 1844. And that three doctrines is the investigative judgment, the ingathering, and the numbering of the 144,000, according to this reading. And then it says, and these two great truths up to the additional message of today. Early Writings, page 277. So that is the Shepherd's Rod Publications. The Seventh-day Adventist denomination was to proclaim before many peoples and nations and tongues and kings. And to repeat again, the two great truths mentioned here is the former rain message and the latter rain message. And the former rain message is the Shepherd's Rod Publication, the writings of Sister White, and the latter rain message is the Shepherd's Rod Publications, according to one symbolic code, number 5 on page 5. So, reading again, it says, whereas to us at the present time, the former rain is the for prophecy, and the latter rain is the Shepherd's Rod. One symbolic code, number 5, page 5. So, to repeat again, in 1 TG, number 42, on page 4, it says, the conclusion then is that without this additional message, that is the Shepherd's Rod Publications, or the Shepherd's Rod message. The conclusion then is that without this additional message, the church will never reach her goal. So what is the goal that had been given by God to the Seventh-day Adventist Church? To preach to many nations, many peoples, and tongues, by which the particular object in view is the first fruits, the 144,000 living saints, according to the Shepherd's Rod. So, let us read again in track number 5, page 105. So, it says here, the trumpet symbolism has now brought us up to the time of the ingathering of the first fruits, the 144,000. So, remember, the Shepherd's Rod here is plainly telling us that particular object in view on the trumpet study is the ingathering of the first fruits, the 144,000. First fruits predicate second fruits, for it is necessarily true that there can be no first where there is no second. Wherefore, just as there is a prophetic commission for the ingathering of the first fruits from many nations, so there must be one for the ingathering of the second fruits from all nations. There being moreover an important event and a message at the commencement of the ingathering of the first fruits from many nations since 1844, so must there be an important event and a message signalizing the commencement of the ingathering of the second fruits, the great multitude from all nations. Track number 5, page 105. Now, let us be very careful in this very important subject. First of all, the many nations, the particular object in view, it is the 144,000 living saints, spiritual Israel. Now, all of us knew that there is no more possibility of the Seventh-day Adventist Church to reach her goal, since they already completely rejected the Shepherd's Rod publications. The only hope that they could be able to reach their goal. And to repeat again, in the subject of Revelation chapter 10, the focal point is many nations, whereas the subject on Revelation chapter 11 is all nations. So from many nations to all nations, or in other words, the particular object in view on the subject on chapter 10 is the first fruits of the living saints, 144,000 spiritual Israel, whereas the particular object in view on Revelation chapter 11 is the second fruits, the great multitude of Revelation 7, verse 9. So the dividing line is verse 2, because it is in verse 2 that says, do not measure the court without the temple, and that is pointing to the great multitude which no man could number. So we need to focus our attention first to the subject on Revelation chapter 10, which pointing to the ingathering of the 144,000 living saints. Now, I would like to go back again to that angel in Revelation chapter 10, by which we already explained that the angel on its primary phase, or the groundwork, is pointing to William Miller. And several times we explain that Revelation chapter 10 being a part of the sixth trumpet, because the bracket period of the sixth trumpet is in Revelation 9:14 to Revelation 11:14. According to track number 5, page 79, by which the Shepherd's Rod plainly told us that reading on track number 5 on page 79, saying, with the 14th verse of Revelation chapter 9 begins the description of the sixth trumpet, and it ends with the 14th verse of Revelation 11, which announces the second woe, which is the sixth trumpet, is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. Accordingly, its prophetic event recorded between Revelation 9:14 and 11:14 must find its fulfillment in the period of the sixth trumpet between the first and the second woes. Track number 5, page 79. So it says its prophetic event recorded between Revelation 9:14 and 11:14 must find its fulfillment in the period of the sixth trumpet between the first and the second woe. And to get more understanding, please try to view our subject, the last three woe trumpets. Now, we already explained that concerning the sixth trumpet, let us distinctly separate the sounding, the period of the sounding of the sixth trumpet, and the period of the fulfillment of the events of the sixth trumpet. Now, concerning the period of the sounding of the sixth trumpet, the voice cometh from the golden altar. That is the voice of Jesus Christ. Or, in other words, the sounding of the sixth trumpet must be in the period of time while Jesus Christ is in the holy place. That is the sounding of the sixth trumpet, because the focal point is Jesus Christ. So we need to follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. So the statement in track number 5, page 78, in coming from the golden altar, the command, loose the four angels, shows that the sixth trumpet sounded sometime before the veil to the most holy apartment of the heavenly sanctuary was lifted. Otherwise, the voice would come from the throne, the most holy place. And only in the sixth trumpet, the perfectly portraying the Levitical priesthood in Leviticus 23, verse 23 to 25, that before the high priest will enter to the most holy place, there must be a sounding of trumpets for 10 days. And to repeat again, Jesus Christ entered to the most holy place in October 22, 1844. So the message that was proclaimed by Miller must be the fulfillment of that sounding of the trumpets. And exactly 10 years from 1833 to 1844, according to the Shepherd's Rod, because the 10 days, each day equivalent to 1 year, so that is 10 years. So here in White House Recruiter, page 19, saying, the only revelation of new prophetic truth subsequent to the Reformation is the announcement of the year in which was to begin the work of cleansing the sanctuary, primarily in behalf of the dead, based on Daniel 8:14, but not fully understood. As its announcement was made by the First-day Adventists, it necessarily follows that there were the third group of servants with a new and distinctive message, and as is well known, they started proclaiming it in the year 1833, announcing that the cleansing of the sanctuary was to commence in the year 1844. Thus, in 1833, the clock of parabolic time struck the hour of 6. White House Recruiter on page 19. So that is the proclamation of the antitypical sounding of the trumpet, which is also called as the midnight cry, right? The coming of the bridegroom to the most holy place. So let us read again into SR page 181. The midnight cry was first proclaimed prior to 1844. And the coming of the bridegroom was Christ coming to the most holy place in the heavenly sanctuary for the investigative judgment of the saints. The investigation being in two sections, first the judgment for the dead and the second for the living. The cry must be repeated, otherwise would have no present truth for the time of the judgment of the living. Now, ponder deeply, brothers and sisters, because this is a very important subject. So, the midnight cry was first proclaimed prior to 1844, and the coming of the bridegroom is Christ coming to the most holy place. But what we are studying is Christ's second coming to the most holy place. In the writings of Sister White, it is called to his return. Christ's return to the most holy place. And of course, the word return, meaning to go back again. And it cannot be applied in October 22, 1844, because that is the first time that Jesus Christ entered to the most holy place. And it is illogical to say that Jesus Christ returned to the most holy place, while in reality, that is the first time that he entered to the most holy place. Now, reading again in Volume 2, 190, what time is he referred to? Not to the revelation of Christ in the clouds of heaven to find a people asleep, no, but to his return from his ministration in the most holy place of the heavenly sanctuary, when he lays off his priestly attire and clothes himself with the garments of vengeance. And when the mandate goes forth, he that is unjust, let him be unjust still, and he which is filthy, let him be filthy still, and he that is righteous, let him be righteous still, and he that is holy, let him be holy still. Volume 2, pages 190 and 191. And we fully believe that it is perfectly corroborating to the statement on 2SR 241, saying, therefore, the prophecy by Enoch commenced its fulfillment in 1844. That is the first time that Jesus Christ entered to the most holy place, at which time the Lord came with the names and records of those who are sleeping in the grave. And when the investigation of the dead is finished, then he comes with the names of the living saints, first with 144,000, and afterwards with the great multitude of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues. 2SR 241. So, that second coming of Jesus Christ to the most holy place, he will be bringing the names of the 144,000 living saints. Now, let us go back again to our subject, Revelation chapter 10, hoping that each episode, we could be able to gradually decipher this very important subject, the 42 months prophecy. Remember, I would like to repeat again that the focal point of Revelation chapter 10 is the book of Daniel. And concerning the book of Daniel, the particular object in view is the cleansing of the sanctuary in the heavenly sanctuary, and on earth it is concerning the exceeding great horn, by which I would like to make a little summarization. Concerning this exceeding great horn, as stated in 2 SR 139, saying the horn bears rule over all the earth. And the shepherd's rod attached Daniel 2 verse 39, that according to Daniel 2 verse 39, it is the brass kingdom that shall be ruled over all the earth. But the shepherd's rod made it so plain, it was not true in the Grecian Empire. And the shepherd's rod trying to emphasize that if it is pagan Rome and papal Rome that be ruled over all the earth, then the Bible would say it must be the iron, not the brass. But the Bible cannot be mistaken. It is the brass kingdom. And it says here in 2 SR 140, had Daniel said of the nondescript beast, symbol of imperial and papal Rome, that it would be ruled over all the earth, the claim would prove incorrect. So that claim would prove incorrect because the Bible never say that the iron shall be ruled over all the earth, but it is the brass kingdom. And we already explained that according to track number 2, page 13, brass as a numerical value of number 3. And the exceeding great horn has 3 stages or 3 divisions. Track number 3, page 39. Pagan Rome, ecclesiastical Rome, and Protestant period. Therefore, it can be easily understood that it is in the Protestant period that the exceeding great horn be ruled over all the earth. What is the focal point? The daily and the sanctuary. That it is in the third period that the exceeding great horn completely trodden underfoot the daily and the sanctuary, by which the shepherd's rod declared clearly that not the sanctuary itself, but the place. Track number 4, page 26, it says, note that the truth and the place, not the sanctuary itself, were cast down. That is, both Christ's truth and his place in the earthly sanctuary were set aside, so that the knowledge as to his mediatorial work became obscured. So there are two significance. What does it mean that the daily and the sanctuary, not the sanctuary, not the daily and the sanctuary alone, but the place itself had been trodden underfoot, meaning the knowledge concerning Christ's mediatorial work became obscured. When it comes to the heavenly sanctuary, I would like to explain first that according to Matthew 5 verse 13, trodden underfoot meaning lost its value. Now, ponder deeply, brethren. What does it mean that the place itself had been trodden underfoot by the exceeding great horn in the third period, which is the Protestant period? If it is concerning the heavenly sanctuary, brothers and sisters, if it is concerning the heavenly sanctuary, all is talking about Christ's mediatorial work in the heavenly sanctuary, but very indefinite. What is the proceedings? Brothers and sisters, they're talking that we are now in the judgment and Christ's mediatorial work in the heavenly sanctuary, but what mediatorial work? And to repeat again, the mere fact that Jesus Christ is very plain that it is in the holy place, stand in the holy place. Who should read it? Let him understand. Matthew 24 verse 15. Because according to 2SR 139, let us read again. 2SR page 139. It says, but the sanctuary and the daily were held to the ground by the great horn up to 1844. At that time, he lost control of them. In the power of the 3 angels' messages raised the truth from the ground, or from underfoot and place it in the church. So, in other words, brothers and sisters, the exceeding great horn had not been able to trodden underfoot Christ's mediatorial work in the most holy place. Because when Jesus Christ entered to the most holy place in October 22, 1844, he lost control of them. So, specifically, the mediatorial work of Jesus Christ by which the exceeding great horn had been completely trodden underfoot is Christ's mediatorial work in the holy place and not in the most holy place. So, I would like to put again here in 1833 to 1844. So, here, brothers and sisters, still the exceeding great horn trodden underfoot the daily and the sanctuary. But in 1844, he lost control of them. And up to October 10, 2012 or May 19 in Gregorian 2011. But when Jesus Christ mediatorial work in 2011, May 20, 2011 up to March 27, 2021, or in Bible calendar October 10, 2022, typifying here 10 years and also 10 years, the sounding of the sixth trumpet. This is the mediatorial work of Jesus Christ in the holy place by which the exceeding great horn trodden underfoot, completely trodden underfoot, both in the heavenly sanctuary as well as on the earthly sanctuary, by which pointing to the United States of America. Everybody, if you could see on YouTube or on Facebook, everybody is talking about Christ's mediatorial work in the heavenly sanctuary, but most of them are talking about Christ's mediatorial work in the heavenly sanctuary, in the most holy place. So, they were in total ignorance concerning Christ's mediatorial work in the holy place, which is pertaining to the last two seals. Because the divine command mentioned here in Revelation 11 verse 1, measure the temple, the altar, and the worshippers. These three must be measured. What does it mean by measure? Brothers and sisters, we need to know the proceedings of the temple, which is the first five seals, and then the altar, which is the sixth seal, and then the worshippers, which is the 144,000 living saints. So, for sure, brothers and sisters, to repeat again, the Bible cannot be mistaken. The exceeding great horn bear rule over all the earth. Every Davidian today, they were quarreling, bickering against each other, hostile against each other's faith, while the devil is only wink at their ignorance of the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary, while Christ's mediatorial work is about finished. It says here in 2SR page 92, it is true that people like to be deceived, flattering themselves that they are on the way to heaven, while Satan winks at their ignorance. That is concerning the ignorance concerning Christ's mediatorial work. There were each Davidian group, they have hard time to prove that they are the true movement. But the most important part, which is to know Christ's mediatorial work in the heavenly sanctuary, nobody discuss. If there's somebody discuss, it's very indefinite, brothers and sisters. Just to say that there is mediatorial work of Christ in the heavenly sanctuary, but without any knowledge, brothers and sisters, what mediatorial work? Is it in the holy place or is it in the most holy place? Now, let us go back again to our subject, brothers and sisters. Revelation chapter 10, to repeat again, the focal point is the book of Daniel. And since The shepherd's rod declared clearly in track number 5, page 100, saying events to take place just before the seventh trumpet sounds. Then it says Revelation chapter 10. So that is very plain, easy to understand that the events on Revelation chapter 10 must be fulfilled before the time when the seventh angel begins to sound. And we read several times according to Consecrated Way to Christian Perfection. On page 112, saying, Consecrated Way to Christian Perfection, page 112. And at that time, upon the word of the wonderful numberer in Daniel 8, verse 14, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. In 1844, also was the very time of the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, and when the mystery of God should be finished, as yet declared to his servants, the prophets. Consecrated Way to Christian Perfection, page 112. So, in that reading, we can easily understand that when the seventh angel sounds, Jesus Christ is in the most holy place. But when the sixth angel sounded, Jesus Christ is in the holy place. So that is very plain, because accordingly on track number 5, I would like to read first track number 2TG rather. Here in 2TG, let us read the shepherd's rod, 2TG 13, page 9, 2TG 15, page 5. Okay? I would like to begin first in 2TG 15, page 5. At the beginning of the sounding of the seventh trumpet, the mystery of God is to be finished. And the quotation is Revelation 10, verse 5 to 7. So 2TG 15, 5. So here we can easily understand that Revelation 10, verse 5 to 7. That is the sounding of the seventh trumpet. So I would like to read again. At the beginning of the sounding of the seventh trumpet, the mystery of God is to be finished. So during the sounding of the seventh trumpet, because the word beginning, that is a noun and adjurand, period of time, progressive, beginning. It did not say at the commencement of the sounding of the seventh trumpet. So the word beginning is a period of time, during the time when the seventh trumpet is sounding, the mystery of God is to be finished. And that is Revelation 10, verse 5 to verse 7. So that is the seventh trumpet. And now here in 2TG number 13, on page 9, it says that the seventh trumpet represents the last message is quickly seen from reading. So the seventh trumpet represents the last message. And would you think it is not connected with the third angel? Because the third angel is the last message, right? In volume 5, page 206 and 207, saying this is the last message. Volume 5, page 206 and 207. There is no more to follow after this message have done its work. And for sure, it is connected, brothers and sisters. Think it thoroughly in Consecrated Way to Christian Perfection, 112. The seventh trumpet begins to sound in 1844. Why? Because that is the sounding of the third angel's message on earth, but on primary phase, which is the judgment that pertains to the dead, not the judgment that pertains to the living, because that is the final phase of the third angel's message, the judgment that pertains to the living, according to John Calvin Special, page 38, 39, and page 40. So let's read again the state. 2TG number 13, page 9. It says that the seventh trumpet represents the last message is quickly seen from reading. And the seventh angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven, saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. Here we see that the last message on earth is the message which announces the end of all earthly governments. It says, here we see that the last message on earth is the message which announces the end of all earthly governments. All, meaning without any exemption. Whether that governments is civil, as long as it is earthly, it will end. Whether it is ecclesiastical, as long as it is earthly, it will completely end. And the only government that will last and stand forever is the kingdom of Christ, represented by the stone. According to Prophets and Kings 495. So let's read the statement. It says, God gave the dream and its interpretation to Nebuchadnezzar, not alone that the Babylonian king might know, but that every king who followed him might know that earthly kingdoms are all temporal at best, and must pass away, and that the only eternal kingdom, which shall never pass away, is the kingdom of Christ, represented by the stone which became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Prophets and Kings, page 495. So, that is very plain, brothers and sisters. And on the subject of the judgment, according to on track number 3, page 15, saying that the 4 beasts, it says, I would like to read track number 3, page 15, are therefore symbolical of the saints, all those whose sins will be blotted from the books of records, just as the beasts of Daniel 7 are symbolical of all the kingdoms which will perish in their sins. Track number 3, page 15. So, the citizens of the kingdom are represented by the 4 beasts, and we know that the last generation of men is represented by the flying eagle. So, here it says in 2SR page 196, it says, and the 4th beast was like a flying eagle. Here represents the period in the time of the harvest. The last period is symbolized by the flying eagle to denote the church that shall be translated. A flying eagle is king of birds, as the lion is king of beasts, which is a sign of victory, thus making a perfect symbol. As the judgment of the dead began with the beast like a lion, king of beasts, just so the judgment of the living begins with the beast like an eagle, king of birds. The entire truth of these 4 beasts is not yet revealed. First on page 196. So it was not revealed in the days of Beti-Hadad. But to repeat again, only those who will be a part of that flying eagle as a part of God's kingdom, and the only kingdom that will stand forever. So let us go back again to our subject. According to the voice of inspiration, the very first message to be sounded by the 7th angel, represented by the 7th trumpet, is to announce, to broadcast, because what it means by the term trumpet, according to 2 TG 13, page 9. To let them know that all kingdoms, earthly kingdoms, will pass away. So, if we want to stand forever, not to be among those who will pass away, then we need to ascertain clearly and to be certain that we will be among the subjects of the kingdom of Christ. That is the only way. And it says here in 1 TG, I would like to read that reading, saying, 1 TG 42, page 8, it says, I would like to read this thing. We are sent with a message to the church, reading 1 TG 42, page 8. We are sent with a message to the church, and definitely shows that we have come to the time of the end. What is the time of the end? We already explained, right? That is the subject in Revelation chapter 10. The time of the end is divided into 2. The time of the end during the judgment that pertains to the dead, and the time of the end during the judgment that pertains to the living. But concerning the subject, the time of the end, it is even more particularly pertaining to Jesus Christ. The time of the end, when Jesus Christ is in the holy place, in the heavenly sanctuary. The time of the end, when Jesus Christ is in the most holy place, in the heavenly sanctuary. So, the time of the end, when Jesus Christ is in the holy place, that is the sounding of the 6th trumpet. The time of the end, when Jesus Christ is in the most holy place, that is the sounding of the 7th trumpet. Now, brothers and sisters, since there are 3 that had been commanded to be judged, the temple, the altar, and the worshiper. The time of the end, in the days of William Miller from 1833 to 1844, is concerning the temple. But the altar and the worshippers had not been considered during that proceedings. And that is why, when the proceedings of the temple in the most holy place is finished, then Jesus Christ will come to the holy place for the proceedings of the altar and the worshippers. And that is the particular object in view. Then after that proceedings of the altar and worshippers, then Jesus Christ will return to the most holy place, by which we are very certain, without any doubts, that would be on March 27, 2021, or October 10, 2022 in Bible calendar. So I would like to read again in 1 TG number 42, page 8. It says, "We are sent with a message to the church and definitely shows that we have come to the time of the end, the time in which man-made institutions are forever to pass away." 1 TG 42, page 8. That statement is even more definitely applied in our days rather than in the days of B.T. Hotep. In the days of B.T. Hotep, that is the time of the end when Jesus Christ is in the most holy place. But the focal point is the holy place, not in the most holy place as far as the subject on Revelation chapter 10. Because the subject on Revelation chapter 10 is a divine announcement that the mystery of God must be finished before the seventh angel begins to sound, according to Revelation 10, verse 5, 6, and 7. Or in other words, the mystery of God must be completely understood before Jesus Christ will enter to the most holy place, because when Jesus Christ will enter to the most holy place and our names had not been brought by Jesus Christ into the presence of God the Father, then we are forever lost. No more hope, brothers and sisters. So that's why there is an urgency of this message. Now I would like to connect our study first to reading in the Old Symbolic Code. I would like to read this reading in Old Symbolic Code. 2 Symbolic Code number 7 and 8, page 12. 2 Symbolic Code number 7 and 8, page 12. It says, "Will the churches unite before Ezekiel 9? I would like to ponder deeply, brothers and sisters, that I would like to admonish every obedient to ponder deeply what is going on, more particularly in the United States of America. Thus the churches now are not uniting themselves with one goal and one aim. The Christian churches, I think everybody knew that majority of the Christian churches, they were uniting together to sing up Donald Trump, that if possible, he would win on this presidential election. Now, think it thoroughly, brothers and sisters. Would you think it is not a fulfillment of that event, that the church and state are in union? To repeat again, brethren, this is the last and the final election of the United States of America. There will be no more presidential election to follow. Now, I would like to read this reading, 2 Symbolic Code 7 and 8, page 12. It says, "Will the churches unite before Ezekiel 9? Will the nominal churches be united before the slaughter of Ezekiel 9 and before the loud cry of the third angel's message takes place?" Answer: the churches may incompletely confederate almost any time. Remember the statement, incompletely confederate. So it is not a complete confederation, but for sure majority. Although it is not yet the complete confederation, because it says incompletely confederate. Incomplete. But the thought is that majority of them are confederating, uniting each other for one common goal. And it is involved the state. Then it says, the churches may incompletely confederate almost any time, but the union of church and state, the image of the beast, will take place only after the investigative judgment of the dead is completed. Now, in this reading, brothers and sisters, if we could be able to understand the interproceedings in the heavenly sanctuary, then for sure, the occurrence on the earth will follow. The statement is very plain. It says, the union of the church and state, the image of the beast, will take place only after the investigative judgment of the dead is completed. So by studying the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary, when the investigative judgment of the dead is completed, then for sure, immediately, it will follow the image of the beast. According to this reading, the union of the church and state. Now, let us read again the statement in 2 Symbolic Code 7 to 8, page 12. The churches may incompletely confederate almost any time, but the union of church and state, the image of the beast, will take place only after the investigative judgment of the dead is completed. You see, brothers and sisters, at the moment when the investigative judgment of the dead is completed, then the union of the church and states, the image of the beast, will take place. It says, for the fact that the anger of the nations, the time of trouble, Daniel 12 verse 1, the wrath of God, the 7 last plagues, Revelation 15 verse 1, and the time to judge the dead, Daniel 8:14, are events separate and distinct, one following the other. Early writings, page 36. Therefore, the persecution against the church by the image beast arises in the time of the judgment of the living, the time of the loud cry after the sealing of the 144,000. Now, let us ponder deeply concerning Revelation 15 verse 1 as quoted in that reading in 2 Symbolic Code number 7 and 8, page 11. Revelation 15:1, which is called the wrath of God. Let me read to you here the statement. Timely greetings, number 12 on page 24. 1 TG number 12, page 24. So let us read. It is plain, moreover, that all the saints are called to get out of Babylon before the plagues of Revelation 16 fall upon her if they are to be delivered from them. But how can Zion deliver herself if she does not hear the Lord's warnings to leave Babylon? It is therefore very urgent that this message reach her ears. Now ponder deeply, brothers and sisters. The subject here is Zion. Why is it that they need to get out of Babylon? To escape the plagues in Revelation 16. What is that plagues in Revelation chapter 16? 7 last plagues. Now, the only plagues concerning the 7 last plagues in Revelation 16 that the Bidian are familiar is the literal 7 last plagues. Are we saying that, brothers and sisters, this message to be proclaimed to Zion is the time when the 7 last plagues, which is literal 7 last plagues, are about to be poured out? Zion, Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem cannot be applied to the world. Let us read 1 TG number 3. 1 TG number 3, page 12. The angels have charge of the city, Jerusalem, not of the world, and not of Babylon. Even an altogether uninformed Christian knows that the terms Jerusalem, Judah, Israel, and Israel mean the church never even as much as imply the world. They have always meant the church and always will mean the church, for that is what they are. 1 TG number 3, page 12. So that term, Jerusalem, Zion, Judah, Israel, it cannot be applied to the world. So, generally, brothers and sisters, the term Jerusalem, Judah, Israel, Zion must be referred only to Sabbath keepers. And it could not be the spiritual Israel, because spiritual Israel, they never get out from Babylon, but they get out from Egypt. And we explained several times, brethren, that in tract number 5, I would like to read page 56. to gather a class defiled with women as second fruits. This class of saints must be those who have at one time been married to some unchristian mistress, a heathen church, and who consequently are not descendants of either Jacob or the Christian church. So there are to be two harvests, one from the church and one from the world. The record of the former mentions only Israelites, the 144,000, those not defiled with women, though it does not say that there may not be others, while the record of the latter, however, definitely embraces a great multitude from all nations, which must necessarily be both of undefiled and defiled ones, Jews and Gentiles. So the great multitude constitute two classes, defiled and undefiled. And the undefiled must be the Sabbath keepers, the constituent, the first increment of the great multitude. It must be pointing to the Sabbath keepers. The same in tract number 3 on page 72 saying, and the second fruits, and the second gives the second fruits, the great multitude from all nations, some of whom also may be undefiled with women, heathen churches. Some of the constituent of the great multitude must be undefiled, but that is the Sabbath keepers, not under the banner of the third angel's message. Why I need to connect, brothers and sisters? It is concerning the plagues. The 7 plagues to be poured out on the symbolical earth is the symbolical 7 last plagues. But the 7 plagues to be poured out on the literal earth is the literal 7 last plagues. So we have the 7 last plagues symbolical poured out to the symbolical earth, and 7 last plagues to be poured out to the literal earth, the literal 7 plagues. So the very message to be proclaimed to the symbolical earth, to all Sabbath keepers, not under the banner of the third angel's message. They need to get out from Babylon so that they will not be partakers of that 7 plagues which are symbolical. Here in the old symbolic code, it says 3 symbolic code, 8 to 10, page 9. 3 symbolic code, 8 to 10, page 9. Please explain what are the 7 last plagues. The nature of the 7 last plagues is not yet revealed. And that is pointing to the symbolical, not the literal. Because no need to reveal in the literal 7 last plagues. The revelation is written in figurative speech, and therefore the description of the plagues may be symbolical, as are the 7 seals and the 7 trumpets, etc. So that is very plain, and it was not revealed in the days of B.T. Hotep, although that is not my main subject actually. But I would like to let us read to SR page 121, to SR page 121. And there came one of the 7 angels, which are the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. Revelation 17 verse 1. The angel that was talking to John is one of the 7 which had the 7 vials of the 7 last plagues. Then it says, see Revelation 15 verse 7 and Revelation 16 verse 1. It will be noticed that he had the vial of the plague ready, but it had not been poured out. At that time he said to John, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore. By the information given, it is certain that the event predicted by the symbol, the woman sitting on the beast, is shortly before the plagues are poured out, and in the time when the woman is to be judged. Although we have a separate subject concerning this subject, but the portion that I would like to emphasize in this reading, that at the time when one of the 7 angels is talking to John, they had already the 7 vials of the 7 last plagues. And the quotation is, see Revelation 15 verse 7. And of course, the statement says that when the angel is talking to John, the conversation is that the angel is giving all the information to John concerning the woman. And we know the woman represents the system. And for sure, even though we will not yet elaborate the entire subject because that is a separate subject, But 100%, we can easily discern that this is during provisionary time. For it is illogical and impalpable inconsistency if the angel would give the information to John after the close of provision. And secondly, it could not be the literal John. The actual fulfillment must be pointing to God's servant, by which at the time when that angel is making a conversation to that servant of God, they had already the vials of the 7 last plagues, and one among them is talking to that servant. Now, let us read track number 5. Here in track number 5 on page 116 and 117, it says, consequently, the fulfillment of the prophetic statement, the temple of God was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament, Revelation 11 verse 19, will, just as it was in the beginning of the judgment, be realized after the judgment is finished. That is, after the close of provision, when the door of the temple is opened. And after the judicial tribunal leaves the temple, one of the 4 beasts will give unto the 7 angels 7 golden vials full of the wrath of God, Revelation 15 verse 7. And the temple will be filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power, and no man will be able to enter into the temple till the 7 plagues of the 7 angels are fulfilled, Revelation 15 verse 8. Now, let us focus to Revelation 15 verse 7. One of the 4 beasts, we know that the 4 beasts represent the 4 kinds of redeemed. And I would like to go immediately. The 4 beasts, we have Moses, Abel, Elijah, and Enoch. Moses, Abel, Moses, Elijah, and Enoch. One among them will be the one to give the 7 vials to the 7 angels, according to the Bible, Revelation 15:7. But when? After they came out from the most holy place. Now, I would like to apply, brothers and sisters, that statement, follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth, to the 4 beasts, the replica on earth, the 4 beasts in the heavenly sanctuary. The 4 beasts, they follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. When Jesus Christ entered to the holy place, the 4 beasts were there. In October 22, 1844, when Jesus Christ entered to the most holy place, the 4 beasts followed the Lamb. Now, ponder deeply Revelation 17 verse 1 as explained by the Sharper's Rod in 2 SR 121. That the 7 angels cannot obtain the 7 vials not until one of the 4 beasts will give it to them. But the absolute fact is that the Bible is very plain as explained by the Sharper's Rod. One of the 4 beasts gave the 7 vials to the 7 angels after they came out from the most holy place. But they followed the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. We can easily understand that it is Jesus Christ that came out from the most holy place and then go to the holy place. Then the 4 beasts followed the Lamb. And when the 4 beasts followed the Lamb, after they came out from the most holy place, they gave the 7 vials. They gave the 7 vials to one of the 4 beasts, and for sure, I do fully believe it is Elijah. The 7 vials that was given by one of the 4 beasts, which I do fully believe it is Elijah, represents the symbolical 7 last plagues. And it was given to the 7 angels when Jesus Christ is in the holy place, when the 4 beasts follow the Lamb, right? They follow the Lamb, whithersoever he goeth. So, that is the time when Christ's mediatorial work is in the holy place, brothers and sisters. Now remember, in the vision of Sister White, in 4 BC 11:39, the quotation is very plain. Revelation 11 verse 19. Reading first 4 BC 11:38, chapter 6, Isaiah chapter 6. Then it says, Revelation 11 verse 19. So Revelation 11 verse 19. And it says, 4 BC 11:39. The vision given to Isaiah represents the condition of God's people in the last days. They are privileged to see by faith the work that is going forward in the heavenly sanctuary. And the temple of God was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament. As they look by faith into the Holy of Holies and see the work of Christ in the heavenly sanctuary, they perceive that there are people of unclean lips, a people whose lips have often spoken vanity, and whose talents have not been sanctified and employed to the glory of God. Well may they despair as they contrast their own weakness and unworthiness with the purity and loveliness of the glorious character of Christ. But if they, like Isaiah, will receive the impression the Lord designs shall be made upon the heart, if they will humble their souls before God, there is hope for them. The bow of promise is above the throne, and the work done for Isaiah will be performed in them. God will respond to the petitions coming from the contrite heart. For BC 11:39. First of all, that vision indicates provisionary time. But the vision cannot be mistaken. Revelation 11:19. The door was open. Of course, that is the entrance in the holy place, because that is the only door that had been closed since October 22, 1844. The entrance to the holy place. So the purpose of God, why is it that the temple in heaven is open? The significance is that God bestowed unto his people the entire proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary, from holy place to the most holy place, because it was open. Brethren, one of the significance why God reversed the order, the judicial insignia, I would like to read again that reading in tract number 15. On page 64, it says, just the portion saying, descend to earth in reverse order. What is the significance? Why God reversed the order of the judicial insignia? Just to say that, oh, it is reverse order. But what is the significance? To let us know that in the perfect fulfillment of the prophecy, it is reverse order. We already read, brethren, that according to tract number 5, page 35, saying, naturally then, the first seal must precede the first trumpet, the second seal the second trumpet, and so on, like the needle and the shuttle, rather than that all 7 seals must precede all 7 trumpets. So, the 7th seal, its respected trumpet, is the 7th trumpet. Now, concerning our subject, the 7th trumpet, being a corresponding trumpet to the 7th seal, by which the judicial insignia is reversed, to let us know that the fulfillment of the prophecy on the 7th trumpet is reversed. Beginning from verse 19, then 18, 17, 16, then 15. Now let us read the Bible. Revelation 11, verse 19. And the temple of God was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament. And there were lightnings, and voices, and thunderings, and earthquake, and great hail. How many judicial insignia here? First, lightnings, then we have voices, then third, thunderings, then fourth, earthquake, then fifth, great hail. That is the 7th trumpet. There are 5 judicial insignias. What is 5? The number of the Bible. Revelation 10 verse 5, 6, and 7, we know that is pointing to the 6th trumpet and the 7th trumpet. The mystery of God must be finished, right? The mystery of God must be finished, brothers and sisters. Sometimes you will wonder in tract number 13, I would like to read this reading, saying the facts of the Bible. Tract number 13, page 38. It says, facts about the Bible. The Bible contains 3,566,480 letters, 773,693 words, 31,102 verses, 1,189 chapters, and 66 books. The longest chapter is the 119th Psalm. The shortest and middle chapter, the 117th Psalm. The middle verse is the 8th of the 118th of Psalm. Now let us go to Psalms 117, the middle part. Verses 1 and 2. Psalms 117, verses 1 and 2. God's mercy and truth. Verse 1. O praise the Lord, all ye nations. Praise Him, all ye people. Verse 2. For His merciful kindness is great toward us, and the truth of the Lord endureth forever. Praise ye the Lord. Now, ponder deeply, brothers and sisters, this middle part of the entire Bible. The focal point says, "O praise the Lord, all ye nations, praise Him, all ye people." Why? Because His merciful kindness is great toward us, and the truth of the Lord endureth forever. The truth of the Lord endureth forever. Praise ye the Lord. But if you will notice, verse 1 contains 12 words, right? And verse 2, there are 21 words. 12 plus 21 equals 33. Half of the Bible, 66 divided by 2 equals 33. That is also the age of Jesus Christ when He died on the cross at the age of 33. And here in Psalms 118, verse 8, the middle verse in the Bible, Psalms 118, verse 8, it is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in man. Verse 8 contains 14 words to 7, right? 14 words. But if you will add the verse, 8 plus 14 equals 22, pointing to the book of Revelation. It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in men. It is better to trust what the Revelation had said than to trust in any man. Now, let us go back again to Revelation 11. To repeat again, the seventh trumpet from verse 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. This is the last trumpet, the last message, according to 2TG 13, page 9. Contain 5 verses, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Why? To represent the Bible. I would like to read again this reading in 1SR 127. 1SR page 127. It says, it could be explained that this brings us to the opening of the seventh seal of Revelation 8 verse 1. To repeat again, let us distinctly separate the opening of the seventh seal in the holy place and the opening of the seventh seal in the most holy place. The opening of the seventh seal in the holy place is only pertain to the worshippers, and it is more pertaining to the blotting out of names. But the opening of the seventh seal in the most holy place is pertaining to the blotting out of sins. Not to confuse the one to the other. To repeat again, let us distinctly separate the opening of the seventh seal in the holy place and the opening of the seventh seal in the most holy place. The opening of the seventh seal in the holy place precedes the opening of the seventh seal in the most holy place. The opening of the seventh seal in the holy place is blotting out of names. But the opening of the seventh seal in the most holy place is blotting out of sins. Now let us read again here in 1SR 127. It could be explained that this brings us to the opening of the seventh seal of Revelation 8 verse 1. The church on the seventh step, under the seventh seal, and in the seventh trumpet. For sure, that is the 11th hour church, the house of David, the 8th church in the New Testament succession. The church on the seventh step, on the seventh seal, and in the seventh trumpet. So the statement in 4 BC 11:3-8. Let us read again. 4 BC 11:3-8. It says, Isaiah's experience represents last day church, but the quotation is Revelation 11 verse 19. seventh trumpet. Therefore, the church mentioned here must be the church mentioned in 1 SR 127. The church in the seventh trumpet. But the vision of Sister White in 4 BC 1138 and 1139 is provisionary time. Therefore, concerning the prophecy of the seventh trumpet, the fulfillment first pointing to reverse order, beginning from verse 19. The time when the entire judicial proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary had been completely unfolded to the church in the seventh trumpet. The seventh trumpet have 5 verses. Verse 5, Revelation 11, verse 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. Number 5 is the number of the Bible. To repeat again, the seventh trumpet and the third angel's message is closely connected. Both of them categorized as the last message. Volume 5, page 206 and 207. The third angel says this is the last message. There is no more to follow. After this message shall have done his work. But the third angel's message is divided into 2 divisions. The third angel's message during the judgment that pertains to the dead, and the third angel's message during the judgment that pertains to the living, as well as the seventh trumpet. The focal point of the seventh trumpet is Christ's mediatorial work in the most holy place. Because that is very plain here in Revelation 11, right? This is pointing to the most holy place. The door was opened. What is the door that had been opened? The entrance to the holy place. What happened to the sanctuary in heaven in October 22, 1844? According to 2SR. It says, let us read again the statement given by the Voice of Inspiration. 2SR page 215. It says, 2SR 215, the 2 apartments were separated by a veil. In the Day of Atonement, the veil or door of the early tabernacle was open, and the high priest went in. But let it be remembered that the door veil was left open while the high priest officiated. Thus the 2 apartments became one. So what happened? In October 22, 1844, the 2 apartments became one. It says, for this reason, the congregation were not permitted in the holy place on that day, as they were at other times. For the veil being lifted, the holy place also became most holy. So while the door to the most holy was open, the entrance to the holy was closed. 2SR page 215. So that is very plain, brothers and sisters, according to the Voice of Inspiration. Here the Shepherd's Rod is plainly telling us that the fulfillment of the seventh trumpet is in reverse order. Now here let's read again in Revelation 11, beginning from verse 19, being reverse order. Therefore, verse 19 must be the fulfillment of the time when the entire proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary was bestowed by God to the church under the seventh trumpet, the last day church, according to 4 BC 1138. Then after that temple of God in heaven was opened, it says in verse 18, and the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come, and the time of the dead that they should be judged, and that thou shouldest give reward unto thy servants the prophets, and to the saints, and them that fear thy name, small and great, and shouldest destroy them which destroy the earth. Now let us one by one, brothers and sisters, explain these verses from verse 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, by which on verse 15, that is the time when Jesus Christ entered the most holy place, saying, and the seventh angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. So here, brothers and sisters, we can easily discern that from verse 19 up to verse 15, that is Christ, when Jesus Christ is still, or Jesus Christ is in the holy place. Then, when Jesus Christ will enter the most holy place, then the fulfillment, the perfect fulfillment, or the entire fulfillment of the seventh trumpet will then in consecutive order. Verse 15, verse 16, verse 17, 18, and 19. So the partial fulfillment must be verse 19, verse 18, verse 17, 16, 15. Then the perfect fulfillment, verse 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. So, brothers and sisters, we will continue this subject on our next episode, and hoping that God would bless us and would help us. I know that the time is no longer far distant, and it is high time now that we need to study the book of Revelation seriously through the Shepherd's Rod publications. So, before we could have complete understanding concerning the 42 months prophecy in Revelation 11 verse 2, it is in absolute importance to understand the entire subject of Revelation 10 verse 1 to 11, then Revelation 11 verse 1 and 2. And we will continue this subject to our next episode. Thank you very much for listening and viewing this program. May the good Lord bless you and have a beautiful, wonderful evening.